I'd like to start with the introductions. So again, thank you, Dr. Suja, for joining us. Today is a really special occasion for us at Storybook. My name is Francisco. I'm the co-founder of Storybook app, the #1 sleep and wellness app for children across the world. We've been the #1 app in 90 countries, but today is really special because we're launching Storybook in Arabic. And we're bringing this unique approach to bedtime through stories and bonding activities. We'll be talking a lot about storytelling and early childhood development with Dr. Suja. And I heard so much about you already. You published so many papers, dozens of papers. And Dr. Suja is a professor in early childhood special education and applied behavior analysis, and she's the current ECD advisor at the Abu Dhabi Early Childhood Authority. She has over 25 years experience in early childhood development, and Dr. Suja has been the researcher, policy influencer, and advocate. She has consulted for organizations like UNICEF, and she has, again, over 50 published studies, so it's quite impressive. Dr. Suja, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Francisco. Pleasure to be here.
And well, again, I briefly talked about the Storybook app, and we'll be leaving here in the comments for everyone to see what exactly is the Storybook. But in a nutshell, we realized that now more than ever, children are in an anxiety crisis. There's so many problems happening in the early child life stage of life, and a lot has to do with the lack of going back to what worked for ages, the bedtime stories, bonding time with the parents, that cannot be replaced with YouTube Kids or devices. So it's really interesting for us to talk about stories and how this has gone from being such a rich opportunity to connect as a parent with children, and now really losing the battle to screens. So what can you tell us about bedtime stories and in different cultures, especially in the Arab world, and how that has changed over the last years?
Yes, thank you, Francisco. When I was like first asked to talk about this, the first memory that came, across my mind is that when my kids were like really little, and that was like maybe 17 years ago, and I was really engaged with them with the bedtime stories. It was like really big thing, because as a working mother, you can imagine that I've spent a lot of like hours away from home, away from the kids. So it was like, the bonding time with them. And I can't really stress how important this, time that you spend with little children. Now, I can imagine like now we are like living in a global village, all of us. So what's happened in the East, it's similar to what's happened in the West and, North and South. So it's really similar experiences. And I'm talking about this because I'm engaged in a longitudinal study, cross-cultural study for so many years now, for like more than 15 years. And we're studying different, parents' behaviors and how children really reacted to these behaviors across the globe. Actually, we're like studying like 9 major, countries and cultures around the world, from Jordan to Colombia to Sweden to Italy to Kenya to China. You can imagine, you name it. So what we found is that we have definitely more similarities between cultures than we do have differences. And maybe the differences sometimes lies within the culture more than between cultures, which is really interesting. And this applies to storytelling and bedtime and the bonding with the children. And now I think the maybe the challenge, I would say our enemy is the challenge is that the technology that's really definitely it's beneficial to have this technology revolution around the world, but at the same time it's sometimes taking our time away from the children. So as you mentioned, like taking it back and really use this time effectively with the children, it means a lot. And we need to remind, the parents of bedtime stories, how this is really important, because like you don't really hear it a lot, and maybe that was maybe one of the major success for your application, the app, that you really deal like about story time, bedtime stories. And of course we're talking here about children, like from infancy, like really very, very little children, up to, because we're talking about early childhood, up to 8 years. And having, this bond through the storytelling time really has a major effect on children's development. And of course, the books, like the hard copy books, really important, but at the same time, because we can't deny that everybody's using their phones, everybody using the technology, so why not use it, in a very positive way, which is one way is the storytelling. So I don't think, just going back to your question, the culture in the Arab world is much different from the, what's happening in the rest of the world in terms of the using these technology and going back to the bedtime stories, because there is a lot of change, like looking back at like my family and children, and see what I was like doing with them earlier, comparing to what's happening now with the children and their parents, and the time is spent. And sometimes really parents are lost, nowadays, because they keep, how can I connect with my child? What should I do? It's pretty, easy. It's not like something complicated, but we need to bring them back to this. So yeah, I'm excited today to talk about the the impact and the power of a story at like bedtime, how this affect, good night sleep, because it's also the good night sleep has its own, impact on child development, and how the stories are, influencing this and impacting this.
Absolutely. This is fascinating. I found so interesting that you're mentioning across so many cultures that you have researched, the challenges are pretty much the same. And that's something that we have over 4 million downloads by now, mostly across the Americas, the US, some parts of Europe. But we hear this from parents more and more, and it's that it's the same question is, how can I bond with my kids? How can I improve my relationship with my kids? And what we get from parents is, yeah, I'm tired. It's been a long day. I'm working, and I have little energy at bedtime. And reading a story, it's a compromise. It's something that feels tiresome, especially because kids don't want just a story and that's it. Kids really want the presence of the parent. That's what we've seen. The kid can go, can find 1,000 excuses to get up, to drink another glass of water, or because they are scared, because of so many things. But what they are really longing for is the parent's presence. How can we balance that? When we are so tired, how can we get into the right mindset? And we have an answer that we have given to parents. And that's pretty much what we created with Storybook. It's how do we make this so easy, but at the same time so engaging. I didn't mention this, but you already know it because you have seen the app. And I would love to hear your opinion on the Storybook app. But Storybook, it's audio based. So it's really an enabler of the moment. If you're tired enough to read the story, why don't you leave the app to read the story, and you can enjoy the story with your kid. You can lay down, you can listen to the story together, you can practice one of these guided breathing techniques through the story or the relaxation techniques that we have in the app. But it's a two-person experience. So that's something that we see that actually parents like. But going further, I think one of the things that has struck me as a parent is the thought of, I don't have to put my kids to bed. I get to do that. It's a privilege that I have. There are so many cases where the father or the mother is not at home at that hour of the night. And throughout the day, it's hard to find those bonding moments. So going back to where I started, if you're trying to find these bonding moments, what other better moment than this one? So yeah, I'd love to hear your comments on that.
Yes, I can't, agree more with you actually. And I'm just reflecting on my own experience, uh, I used to work really long hours. Like I've been away for like 8 to 10 hours from home, and my, children were really like really young, and I was like eager just coming back home. I was like driving for long hours, and you can imagine how tired I was. But at the same time, it's just something that's inside us as instinct that we want to spend time with our children. It's just to fulfill something inside us. So I can encourage the parents to think positively about this, and to cherish the moment of like bedtime. It's really the time that you can just connect peacefully with your children. I remember I was like going to bed. I have two sons. They were like 2 years apart, and I remember that just I was like in the bed between them, one of them on my right and the other one on my left, and just try to read the stories. Sometimes I read stories, sometimes, and it's really relaxing. I'm just not saying that because just I want to promote bedtime stories, but really it's relaxing for us as parents, and we don't really we reduce the feeling of guilt. I'm sure all of like working parents have this feeling of guilt all the time, that we are away from them, our children. Are we doing it right? Do we have to work? What do we have to do? But really, like, this time when you spend with your children, you really benefit from this as a person. Like, it's as much as it's promote the development of your children. You really it's good for your mental health as a parent, which is really great. So like, being tired, yes, but this is very rewarding for the parents at the same time. So just looking at the benefits of like storytelling for children, like starting from really, they are little, and I'm sure that now even like pregnant mothers, they we encourage them to start reading for the the infant or the fetus inside them. So you can imagine after that, like starting from really like they are like tiny infants up until like really 5, 6, 7, 8 of years, reading these stories, and how this has like great impact on their development. Like, you can imagine their the benefit of their cognitive skills, they benefit on their emotional and social development, on their imagination, on psychological, impact of these stories, and how we can really do it right, how we can, whatever. I mean, even if it's like you're not using the app, just maybe if you are just reciting a story from your culture, and this is, you can imagine how you are like really hitting many birds with one stone. You
Mhm.
are, stressing the rituals of your culture, maybe, and I'm sure all the parents, when they start, telling stories, they start with stories from the culture, from that we already know, and of course there is things related to how old the children are.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I love this, and I would love to dive deeper into this. When you say you can hit with one stone many birds, that cannot be more true. When you're bonding over a story with your kids, there's so many things happening. First, you're providing the sense of security, the sense of I'm important, I'm
Absolutely.
worthy enough of my parents' attention and time and recognition. At the same time, you're talking words to them, and words are powerful. Like when you're saying to your kids things like you can achieve your dreams, you don't know when one of those sentences struck some part of the brain, and that will last forever. Like words can really build or break things in your children's brain. And when you're telling these stories where there's inspiration, when there is when you put their name into the story, when you're talking to them, teaching morals, teaching your culture, and just the act of throwing new words, expanding their vocabulary. So there are so many things happening there. I would love to dive deeper into that. What can you tell us about the power of stories?
Yes, actually, let's start with the cognitive development. We are all, eager to see our children bright, our children the best, our children like start to talk like really early. So vocabulary expansion. I mean, listening to stories significantly enhances vocabulary, enriching children's language skills through, exposure to many diverse words. Maybe they don't understand some of these words, but it's okay. They will later, because the receptive language comes first and then the expressive language. So this is, it's a great gain. And then the memory retention. We want also to work on, the memory of our children. So regular story exposure strengthen children's memory retention and capabilities, facilitating improved recall and cognitive processing skill, which is really needed later in life when they are like in the kindergarten when they start learning. So this is really important, and we have to start this very, very early. And looking at the comprehension skills also. Engagement with narratives promotes enhanced comprehension abilities. They start to understand what they are, and interpret and analyze the story itself. So this is really the cognitive impact. When we look at the emotional and social development and how the story, impact this empathy development. So engaging with characters, emotions, and stories cultivate children's empathy, aiding understanding of adverse perspectives. So I remember when I was talking about the horse broke his leg, and I can remember my child start, oh, he wants to cry, and we say, no, but a doctor came and fixed his leg and everything. So this is really important to the emotional and social development. And then strengthening parent-child bonds. We talked about that earlier, but sharing these experiences foster closeness, especially for like working parents. As I mentioned, they are most of the time away from the children. So it's really a time to nurture environment for communication and relational growth. And also emotional intelligence. This is very important. The growth of emotional intelligence. Stories introduce complex emotional scenarios in many different ways. And you're in a better position to talk about these stories. So it's enhanced children's ability to navigate their own feelings effectively. And this is very, very important to build this resilience among them. And we need to talk about imagination, of course. Now, imagination comes, we need to start this early because this, foster creativity enhancement. It's really allowing children to envision alternative scenarios and explore diverse possibilities. Maybe, of course, it depends on child's age, because not, as you know, all stories, good for like all ages. We need to choose the right, stories for the right age. Also, imaginary words, fantastical elements in narratives engagement and encourage thinking and, enriching cognitive flexibility and innovative problem-solving skills. Yes, these things develop by children, but they don't develop by themselves. That's the importance of rich environment. And we're not talking about like something that we need, it's very expensive to pay for the parents. Not all parents can know. This is something like it's there, it's already there in the environment. So it has really a very positive effects. So problem solving skills, exposure to stories, the dilemmas, how the characters solve the story, a problem inside the scenarios, that's helped children in, to foster this abilities. And also the psychological impact of bedtime stories, coping mechanisms, because, and we're talking about the children here, we all know that all young children are not like similar to each other. There is differences, individual differences between them. Some of them, they are like, and there is like a part that's it's nature, it's inherited from the, and this is like, reflected on their character and the psychology effect. But at the same time, we can affect this, we can enhance this by the storytelling, because it's helped them in the coping mechanisms. Storytelling presents relatable scenarios that empower children to confront and process their fears, um, uh, which is related to the scenarios that we present in these stories. And also it has a calming effect.
Mm-hmm.
The soothing nature of bedtime stories induce relaxation, contributing significantly to improve children's sleeping quality. And of course, this has to do with the quality of and type of stories that we choose. Of course, not scary stories, not things
Yeah,
that they can, relate to, things that really it's soothing them. And because at the end of the day, we want them to sleep well,
exactly.
because sleeping well has, oh my God, amazing and incredible effect also on their, development. And nighttime comfort, this is important, and this comes also with the bedtime stories. So, and it works both ways for the parents, by the way, and for the children. And many times we hear that I went to bed with my children reading them a story and I just fall asleep with them. So it works both ways. And when if I want like to mention something really important, is the repetition of stories. It's not something that you read once and just forget about it and you just look for a new story. Children, young children, they just love repeating stories that they know, that they hear before, that it's familiar for them. It's really reinforced their emotional stability and connection, and they want it just, to hear the story more and more and more. And I'm sure many parents live this experience, that their children, they ask them, tell me the story again, can you repeat but I told it, told you this story, no, I wanted to hear it again. So this is really important because it has also effect on memory. It reinforces memory when you repeat these, the repeated narratives of the story, enhance memory recall, supporting cognitive development through established familiarity with the content, and also theme familiarity. Now, familiar themes and instructions in stories aid children's comprehension, enabling deeper understanding of narrative patterns. And here, maybe I want to talk a little about the children with special needs. We
Mm-hmm.
know that children develop, in a different ways, and specifically children who have some sort of delays, maybe developmental delays, or other, kind of special needs. Those children benefit a lot from such stories. When we choose the right story, when we choose the right narrative, it has a calming effect. It's at the same time, it's like we intervene early age with them, because we know that early intervention had, like, good impact on children. And bedtime stories play a role in that, because we introduce them to many ways of helping them in boosting and improving their abilities, right from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that we want to say, that we're not talking only about like typically developing children. We're also talking about children who has certain, delays or special needs or something. And also I want to mention that the children who have also like fall under the special needs category, which are like maybe deaf or hard of hearing, maybe blind, or have like vision difficulties. Also, we need to, parents have their own way to reach, those children, also in telling stories in ways and through channels that it can reach to these children. So this is really, really important.
Well, with so many benefits around stories, um, I know there's a lot of parents hearing this. there is no more excuses to start telling bedtime stories, to start going more into reading. And what you mentioned, so many points that I would like to discuss, but all these benefits that apply for any children, regardless of their developmental stage, their age, this is part of our human nature. Like we understand our humanity through stories. Everything we do, everything we have done as a species, it evolves around stories. What we see in TV, when we talk about our past, when we talk about our future, all of that is a story. And this is introduced, as you said, since the womb. Like from the minute a baby is born, we're telling them stories. We're talking them through a starting place, an ending place, the plot, the characters, the values. There's so much power around this. That's why it's so fulfilling to be doing what we are doing at Storybook in the Storybook app. We get to see these reviews and stories from everyday moms or dads with kids who have autism or sleep problems or just trying to find a way to engage more with their kids. And these are stories that move us to tears. And I have so many examples, like you mentioned how children with additional challenges can benefit from this. And I remember vividly a family that wrote us an email telling us their story of a 5-year-old with autism level 2, like it was pretty advanced. And he hasn't spoken his mother's name or hasn't addressed her directly, like for a couple of years. And they started to use the storybook because he had problems to sleep. And after hearing the first story, he started to talking back to the audio, to this narrator that was telling him a story about this
Yeah.
girl called Anna and how she was trying to fall asleep and relaxing. And he told Anna, I feel exactly like that. I've been feeling sad and now I feel more relaxed and now I can go to sleep. And I turned around and talked to his mom and told her by the name, I love you. And she cried so much at that moment, sent us an email, we interview her, but
Yeah.
how stories can connect to different developmental challenges, that's pretty remarkable. Now you mentioned memory, and that's fantastic. We've seen in our data, again, we have over 4 million users. We every month we have millions and millions of content played from families across the world, different age ranges. So there's a lot of interesting data that we can see from that. And one of the interesting facts is that 85% of children like to repeat the same stories, what you just said. Like they stick to around 5 stories at a time and they listen to those stories again and again and again. Some of the most popular stories that we have in the app are the stories that um, talk about something specific, like you're capable of achieving your dreams or you're valuable as a person. And kids want to repeat that. I think it cannot be said enough for children with the power of our words, how valuable they are, how loved they are. But there's also another element that you mentioned, and it's the calming element and the sleep inducing element of a properly crafted story. Something, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, but something we introduced with the Storybook app, and that's really unique to what we do. There's no other app that does this, is that other than the audio stories, we provide these relaxation techniques. And in most cases, this includes some element of touch, some element of contact. So as an example, we have guided breathing techniques, and we ask the mom or dad to hold hands with their kids and listen to the story, close their eyes, relax, but they are holding hands. And at some points, they have to raise their hands together or they have to rub each other on the back, like there's interaction. Or the massage stories where the kid is listening to the story and the parent is presented with these feet massage techniques. So the aunt is climbing the hill and the mom or dad is doing like this massage in the feet. It's interactive. But I love to dive deeper in that. So if a story is relaxed by itself, what happens when you include the human contact element?
This is, I mean, something really, really important, especially with the very young children. We start with that because this, like what we call the bonding and attachment, and that's part of it. Like, remember when we talked like to the parents, the mother specifically, when you want to like, to feed your child or your infant or just hold them tight. It's not a good idea, even like if they use the bottle just to put it away, like, and when they are bed and drink it, they have to be close to you because the attachment and the physical touch is so important, right from the beginning. And like doing this is through like these techniques, amazing techniques, and I'm really happy to see this is part of the application that you use, and things that maybe the parents won't know that it's really, it will affect. Yes, definitely, like with the storytelling. So this has its own effect. It's like more of like stimulation to the senses of the child. And definitely we can't talk enough about how this, impact the bonding between the parents and their children. So definitely this is so important. Now, keeping in mind that some children with maybe, like we're talking about, maybe children with autism, sometimes they don't like, the touch a lot like other children, which is fine. We just go with what do they like. But the majority of children, definitely they love it. And if we're looking also about children with Down syndrome, they just love the touch. It's just the opposite of children with autism. But at the end of the day, use do what works with your child. Let the experience guide you. Let's see what works with them. There is no one size fits all. But I'm glad definitely to hear that you have this among the techniques that you guide the parents and help them read stories using these techniques.
Yeah, no, and what you say is so true. Like every family is unique, every child is unique, but there's something really deep in that. Um, we can only acknowledge the importance of our children. We can only make them feel important and feel loved, like really loved, if we get to know them. If
Absolutely.
you don't know your children, like if you don't fully know
Absolutely.
your children, you cannot be honest and truthful with what you're appreciating. So one of our mentors talks about the three hungers that every human has, and that's affection, recognition, and time. We all humans need to have these three things filled to the top. And if you don't allow yourself to have bonding time with your kids, you cannot get to know what are their true fears and their doubts and their hopes and their dreams. So yes, when you get to spend this quality time, you can understand what they like the most, what they don't like, what are their troubles, what are the things that get them excited, and you can have a meaningful experience. Whether this is reading a story from a book, whether this is just listening to some music together.
Yes,
But these experiences are really important for children. I would love to
absolutely. Yeah.
I would love to dive deeper into sleep. So we're talking about different kids with autism as an example, and we just recently published on our Instagram page a super interesting study from the American Psychological
Association.
Association. Yes, thank you for that. And this mentions that around 20 to 30% of cases of autism or ADHD are wrongfully diagnosed because sleep problems can have similar effects. So there's in fact, the same organization categorized sleep problems as um, uh, a massive problem in children, as an epidemic in a way. Um, Around 50% of children get enough hours of sleep at night. And again, sleep is so important. So I'd love to hear more about why is sleep so important, and what can we do to ensure that our kids are sleeping the right amount of time?
Yes, definitely. Sleep is so important as it is like for the adults, it is definitely more important for infants and children, especially the infants. And we need, I'm sure like everybody knows now, infants needs more sleeping hours than the adults. And by age of 1, children sleeping patterns similar to the adults, like they need to sleep around like 10, maybe the adults 7 to 9, but at in average they need to sleep well. It's not only the how many hours, it's just the quality of sleep. And definitely bedtime stories, has a good effect on that, and they help in that. Now, if you want like to just to touch on the brain development, and we know that the brain develops at children in the first 5 years, and especially the first year, the more like the intense of brain development happen during sleep. So if we want to talk about cognitive development, sleep enhances the cognitive development in infants by facilitating optimal brain maturation and synaptic running process. And also the memory. Again, we're talking here about the memory consolidation. Evidence always shows that sleep plays a vital role in memory consolidation, strengthening neural pathways essential for learning, and also the neuroplasticity support that's also fostered during the brain develops during the sleep, enabling, of course, adaptive learning and cognitive flexibility in infants. Now, if we were talking about the physical, growth and sleep, and I remember actually my mother was like long time ago tell me like go and sleep well because you will be taller, and I was like, well, what she's talking about? And it turned out to be true actually,
Yeah.
because the hormonal regulation, sleep triggers the secretion of growth hormones essential for height and muscle development in infancy. Of course, we're not saying that this will, beat the hereditary and nurture versus nature. No, of course, but definitely it will help in these things. And also the growth hormone secretion, intense sleep periods stimulates the growth hormone and release crucial for cell regeneration and overall physical growth. So it's not only the height, it's overall physical growth. And also sleep impact, it has impact on the immune function. Growth hormone during sleep also synergizes immune system development, enhancing infant resistance to infections. So this definitely reduces the amount of like a number of the sickness being ill. As much as it's true for the adults, it's very, very true for infants and young children. So like if we want to shed more lights on this, we can also talk about emotional regulation during sleep. So, and this is what you're just, touching on, that sufficient sleep promotes emotional regulation, enabling infants and children to respond appropriately to stimuli and stressors. And this is really important for all children, typically developing and children with the special needs as well. And also sleep, you can see now the negative effect that sleep deprivation can really lead to irritability and mood swings, hampering emotional well-being in infants, and also has behavioral consequences. Lack of sleep may result in heightened anxiety and behavioral issues affecting attachment and social interaction, and you name it. And this is really true for children who, by their maybe, they have some issues in their development challenges. They might really affected me maybe more than children who are like typically developing in this sense.
Yeah.
So sleep really help them and their regulate their emotions better. We talked about the immune system, that it's reduce illnesses, and the quality sleep accelerates recovery processes, even if they are, ill. We can't avoid, even if we sleep well, we can't avoid sometimes to get ill, right? But sleeping well, accelerate the recovery process. And this is very, very true. Sleep is just, it's the medicine, let's say, for many issues for young children and for adults.
Yes. And sometimes as grown-ups and as adults, we are really clear about this because we see the effects in ourselves. Like it's really clear when you have a bad night of sleep that your next day, your next morning especially, it's going to be tough. So something that we say at Storybook is that the best day starts the night before. And if you get your proper hours of sleep, you will perform better. But that is also true for your kids. So ensuring that they have enough and high quality sleep time since they are born, it's essential. Having a predictable bedtime routine, it's essential for them as well. And as a parent, and I'm sure there's many parents here in the room with us, I would love to hear your questions in the chat, or also share the ages of your children so we can focus the conversation on specific age ranges or doubts. But as a parent, I cannot think on anything else right now that the importance of stories and the importance of sleep. I think in the early ages, especially, those have to be like some of the highest priorities in our list. Making sure that we bond over stories, that we are telling stories, and we're ensuring a proper bedtime routine.
And yeah, what a better way actually to establish this routine, better than having like a bedtime story. This is like the utmost routine that you can really get benefits from the stories themselves, and for like having good night's sleep and the effect of good night's sleep on children's development. So here, like, yes, you're hitting two birds with one stone again.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dive deeper into cultural stories. And at the beginning of this conversation, you mentioned in your research you have found that across countries around the world, the culture is more alike than different. I would love to hear how this translates into the UAE as an example, the MENA region, the Arab-speaking countries. We have just launched over 30 stories in Arabic, which is super exciting for us. The app has been fully transformed and translated to serve Arabic-speaking countries. What do you think it's the reason first why our cultures are more similar than different? And what are the unique characteristics that a storybook, as an example, should incorporate to properly address these countries?
Yes, thank you for this question. Actually, how similar we are, because we are at the end of the day humans. We have similar needs regardless of the shape of these needs and how it looks like, but similar needs. We've been created the same way. We all have feelings. We all have we develop in the same way. No matter what where you go, you see children develop in similar ways. The way they learn the language is similar. There is a lot of similarities, and how they impacted by parents' behavior is also similar. And now the world is becoming like really, as I mentioned before, like very similar, because we live in an open world. When I see my kids, and now they are like boys, they are now 17 and 15 actually, and I travel a lot and see children from all over the world. I'm like, oh my God, I mean, they are so similar. Even if they're in their haircuts, they are so similar, no matter where they are and how far we're talking about, like this country. So it's really very similar. Now, this is the basics of why and how we are similar. Now, going back to how we can make these stories, like translating or having these stories in Arabic is definitely a great thing because language is the way of communication. But it's not the language, like translating a story coming from certain source or tradition, it's not enough. We need to make sure that the content of this story and the scenario is there and the characters are really relevant to the culture that we're talking about. And I'll give you example. Now, if we are talking about a story and the character maybe is white bear living in the north, so this is not something really children can relate to in our region. Maybe if we can talk about certain, definitely, I'm not saying that they don't have to learn about these things. Definitely they have to learn about it. But when you're talking about similar children, little children, it's really nice to tell a story that they can relate to. Maybe you can
Exactly.
talk about a camel. Maybe you can talk about eagle, about these, similar about a palm tree, about, of course, cars are everywhere, but you can maybe traditional dress because we didn't talk about the pictures inside these stories because this is another important thing. And sometimes for very young children and infants who they don't really can read, they need to look at all only book picture book, right? This is the way we call it, picture book. So they look at photos and this is the story for them. So again, adapting stories to certain culture, we need to take into consideration all of this, that the pictures and photos are relevant to the culture. The words that we use are also relevant to avoid literal translation, because I read stories in Arabic that they were literal translation from a Western source, and I can't stress enough how they sounded weird, because the literal translation without really adapting the narrative and the language, it won't have the effect that we want to. So I believe these things that needs to be taken into consideration when putting these stories in Arabic. There is a lot of similarities, definitely, but there is still uniqueness in each culture. Even I'm originally from Jordan, there is a lot of similarities between Arab countries, but there is still some uniqueness inside each culture that we need really to make sure to address.
Absolutely. And this is fascinating for us because we have been physically there in the Emirates this year for over 2 months, learning about the culture. And now we have staff originally from, based on the ground, originally from the MENA region. And we're learning more and more about this fascinating culture. As you said, so many things that are common and are universal, but some specific things that are proper to the culture. And we're, as we translate stories and now as we are creating original stories based on the culture and with local authors, the things we realize is we need to strike the balance between having things that are relatable and are easy to identify yourselves with, but also to expand the vocabulary and expand the understanding so kids can learn about this fascinating culture in Brazil, or these fascinating polar bears in the North Pole, or these fascinating culture, creatures, places like the seven wonders of the world, and so many things that kids can be exposed to. There was a question here in the chat. I cannot see it anymore, But a parent was asking about how to expand vocabulary. And I think this is one of the ways you expose kids to new things. How would you recommend any parent to expand a children's vocabulary?
Actually, expanding the vocabulary, the first and most, thing is stories. Just, tell them stories, telling stories to them, even if you think that they are so young, they will not understand. No, I assure you from my own experience, the research definitely, back this up. But from my own also, experience that children really, they store all of this, vocabulary that they hear, and they release it when the time is right for them. Sometimes maybe after a year, sometimes after maybe 2 years or a few months. So this is the best way to expand vocabulary. Keep talking to them, keep having conversation. Let them use these words that you are, teaching to them, and this will expand their vocabulary. And if you want to talk about the literacy, like having these vocabulary printed somewhere at home, it will be like good also to match the objects or things with the vocabulary or the words that you are talking about to your children. So this is really, really important. And I want just to go back to the point where you talked about the diversity. And if we want to talk about the diverse culture, the most diverse culture, it's UAE actually. I lived in UAE. I'm still, in heavy contact there. Like there are sometimes like 200 different, languages spoken or cultures there. So you can imagine the diversity. You can imagine how rich is this culture. So definitely we don't want the children just to be, trapped in one culture. But the point here is that we need to preserve their own culture.
Mm-hmm.
And this applies to all children. And at the same time, what a great opportunity, or better, the opportunity to be exposed to other culture than being living inside, a culture where it's so diverse in everything, in traditions, in languages, and really everything that you can imagine. So definitely this will expand, the cognitive abilities of a children.
And this goes back to the point that how important it is for the parents to be present. So when your kids are consuming media, when they are listening to stories, watching videos, that you're with them, so you can instill your culture, you can reflect your culture back to your kids and your traditions. At the same time, you can see and be a guard to what you are letting into their brains, because this is the problem why we started everything. Kids are exposed now to social media, to internet, to tablets. They can go and watch YouTube Kids for hours, and that's easy as a parent, practically speaking, because you don't need to be taking care of your kid if your kid is distracted, but it's not healthy. So once you listen to a bedtime story together, you are there so you can filter things out. When we were building Storybook, the first thing we can realize is we have to make this app not for the children. This app is really for the parent. So Storybook is a parent-led app. Everything we do is for the two of them together, and we think that's crucial. As we're getting to the end of this conversation, I would love to hear, Dr. Suha, your analysis of the Storybook app. What have you found interesting? What areas would you recommend us to keep strengthening as we further develop our presence into the MENA region? But I would love to hear your comments on the Storybook app.
Actually, it's fascinating, really, very, very impressive app, and I would recommend it really to new parents, because the new parents usually they are like lost in so many things, and sometimes, because there is a lot of information out there, a lot of application. And sometimes this is, it's not healthy in a way, because not everything out there is really good for for the parents to see. So we need like something that's really tested, evaluated, and like your app that's proved to be to work and benefit children and boost their the development. Maybe I just want to stress the importance of the culture aspect of if like you adapted it to Arabic, it's great, but still if you want like to have it like to spread more between the parents who speak Arabic coming from different culture, so to look at the aspects of the culture in addition and side by side with the language itself, the Arabic language itself, and see what works. I mean, you launched the Arabic version recently. It will be nice, and I will be like really waiting to see how it worked. I'm sure you will evaluate and to revisit and see what worked, what didn't work, and how you can enhance this. And you can't know really until it's in use and see how it works with the parents. But yeah, I really congratulations on these efforts.
Thanks so much. And this is so great advice coming from you. We have just launched the app in the last few days, and we have seen such a massive success so far. So many people using the app, downloading the app. We didn't expect it was going to start this well. And the next thing, we're already working on this, is launching a set of stories that are absolutely inspired in our trips to the UAE, in our deep dive into learning the culture and creating stories from within, with local authors, from local stories.
Yes.
So we are launching that really soon. So I'll be more than happy to share that with you. I would love to hear your opinions on the new stories. But yeah, we're extremely excited to let everyone know that Storybook is now available in Arabic. Catalina from our team left the link, so you can download the app for free, which is fantastic, is that we really want this to be experienced by everyone, regardless of financial status, regardless of regions, regardless of anything. So a Storybook can be used absolutely for free. And there's a premium option to get access to more content if you subscribe. But regardless, if you're getting something out of this conversation today, I think there are two important points, really important points. Bedtime stories are essential for children, and take care of your children's sleep. Those two things are so important, and that those two things have to be done with the parent. That's not something you can delegate. That's something that you have to be present for. Dr. Suha, this has been wonderful. I would love to hear your final piece of advice for all the parents joining here.
Yes, thank you so much for this opportunity, and I enjoyed it a lot. And just for all parents and caregivers, really always think that it's win-win situation. It's as good as for your children, and this is what all parents, looking for and want. But at the same time, it's good for your mental health. So this is really crucial. It will give you better sleep at night, because you have peace of mind, and at the same time, it will give you this comfort and the closeness to your children, and stop feeling guilty, and just think of quality time with your children. So happy storytelling time with your children.
Wonderfully said. Thank you so much, Dr. Suha. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And if you have any questions, any comments, feel free to reach out over social media, through the Storybook app. And yeah, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who joined. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.